March 15th, 44 BC. A cold morning in Rome. 60 men with daggers hidden in their robes are waiting for one man. They call themselves patriots. He calls them friends. In the next few minutes, the history of the world is going to change forever with a single drop of blood. This is the story of how the world's greatest general walked straight into his own grave.
Julius Caesar, the rise and fall. Caesar's story of power and murder unfolds in the last turbulent years of the Roman Republic. In a city swollen with wealth, fear, and ambition. And in a world where the fate of millions could turn on the decisions of a few hundred senators and one extraordinary man. At the start of his rise, Rome is already an empire in all but name, ruling lands from Spain to Greece and from North Africa to Gaul. Yet it is governed by an old republican system designed for a city-state, not for a vast, restless dominion. Power is technically shared between elected magistrates and the Senate, but in practice, real influence lies with a handful of noble families competing for glory, riches, and the loyalty of soldiers, who increasingly look to generals, not to the state, as the source of their future. Into this world steps Gaius Julius Caesar, a member of an old but not richest noble line, who understands that in the new Rome, reputation is everything. He knows that stories, speeches, and carefully crafted images can be as decisive as swords. As a young politician, he learns to captivate the crowds, to charm allies, and to navigate the rivalries of men such as Pompey the Great and Marcus Licinius Crassus, building alliances that will later shake the Republic to its foundations. Years before the daggers of his enemies find him, Caesar makes his name as a brilliant military commander in Gaul, the region that roughly corresponds to modern France and parts of Belgium, Switzerland, and Italy. For years he fights there, defeating tribe after tribe, subduing powerful leaders, and in the process bringing vast new territories and streams of wealth under Roman control. He does not leave the telling of these campaigns to others. Even while on campaign, he writes the Gallic Wars, a series of commentaries that report his victories and decisions in simple, direct Latin, turning cold military reports into a powerful form of political advertising. These texts circulate in Rome, shaping how citizens and senators see him, presenting a picture of a calm, rational commander who fights swiftly, shows mercy when it suits his purposes, and always seems to stand on the side of Rome's greatness. In battles such as the siege of Alesia, where he surrounds a strong Gallic fortress while also facing a huge relief army outside, he shows that he is willing to take enormous risks, confident that his speed, ingenuity, and the loyalty of his legions will carry the day. When he finally triumphs there, the Gallic chieftain Vercingetorix is taken in chains to Rome. The last serious resistance in Gaul collapses, leaving Caesar as the man who has effectively redrawn the map of Roman power. But while his soldiers adore him, his growing strength alarms many in Rome. The Republic still expects powerful generals to give up their armies and return as ordinary citizens. Yet Caesar's successes have created a new reality. His legions are loyal to him personally. His enemies know that once he's back in Rome without his army, he can be prosecuted, disgraced, or destroyed by rival factions. The alliance known as the First Triumvirate has broken apart with Crassus's death. Pompey, once Caesar's ally and even his son-in-law, becomes the champion of those who claim to defend the old republican order. The Senate demands that Caesar disband his forces and return as a private citizen. Caesar faces a stark choice: obey and risk political extinction, or defy the Senate and march on Rome. In the winter of 49 BC, standing with his legion at the Rubicon, a small river marking the legal boundary of his command, Caesar makes the decision that will change history. By crossing that stream at the head of his army, he commits an act of open rebellion against the state, knowing that there will be no turning back and that civil war is inevitable. The story goes that he remarks, "The die is cast," a phrase that captures the sense of a game now beyond anyone's control, as he leads his veterans south toward Rome. Keep sentences relatively short and punchy. Use fragments for dramatic effect to avoid a monotonous tone. Pompey and many senators, taken by surprise and unwilling to fight in the streets, abandon the city and retreat east to gather their forces, leaving Caesar to walk into Rome almost unopposed and present himself as the restorer of order. What follows is a brutal struggle for supremacy across the Mediterranean world. The decisive clash comes at the Battle of Pharsalus in 48 BC, where Caesar's smaller, battle-hardened army defeats Pompey's larger forces, proving that his leadership and the experience of his veterans can overcome superior numbers. Pompey flees to Egypt, hoping for support, but is murdered on his arrival. Caesar soon arrives to find his old rival already dead, a grim sign of how far the politics of power and fear have gone. After years of warfare, Caesar emerges as the unmatched master of the Roman world. He takes the title of Dictator, a legally recognized but traditionally temporary role. But over time, his power grows more permanent, and his official title expands to Dictator Perpetua, Dictator in perpetuity. Under his rule, he starts to reform the state, tackling long-standing problems that had been allowed to fester. He restructures debts, launches colonies for veterans, and most famously reforms the calendar, creating the Julian calendar that will shape timekeeping for centuries. Many ordinary Romans welcome the stability. His image as a victorious general who brings order makes him incredibly popular with the urban masses. Statues and honors multiply. He allows symbols that appear to place him above other citizens, such as his image on coins, a privilege usually reserved for gods or long-dead kings. However, the very qualities that secure his dominance also plant the seeds of his destruction. Rome's political culture is built on the idea that no single man should hold supreme power for too long. Many senators fear that Caesar is turning the republic into a monarchy in all but name. Stories spread that he accepts excessive honors and that he allows himself to be treated like a living symbol rather than a fellow citizen. These small gestures become fuel for deep resentment. Among these uneasy nobles are Marcus Junius Brutus and Gaius Cassius Longinus, men of high rank who will soon move from murmuring against Caesar to plotting his death. Brutus, a descendant of the man who helped overthrow the last king of Rome, carries the weight of a family legacy defined by the defense of liberty. Caesar has shown him favor, but this mercy creates a complex bond of gratitude and tension. Together with Cassius, they begin to form a circle of conspirators, men who call themselves the Liberators. Time presses in on them. Caesar prepares to leave Rome in the spring for the Parthian campaign. 2 days before his scheduled departure, he is summoned to a meeting of the Senate in the theater of Pompeii. Ancient sources speak of omens and warnings, strange dreams, sacrifices with bad signs, and direct pleas from those who sense danger. But Caesar, whether out of confidence, fatigue, or a refusal to appear fearful, decides to go. The morning of the Ides of March, the 15th day of the month, dawns as another busy day in Rome. But within the Senate, a silent decision has already been made. Caesar enters the chamber and takes his seat, surrounded by men who greet him with respectful words while hiding daggers beneath their togas. One of the conspirators, Julius Caesar, approaches with a request, encircling Caesar until they have formed a tight human ring. At that moment, Servilius Casca strikes the first blow, stabbing or slashing at Caesar's neck. For a brief instant, Caesar tries to resist, grappling with Casca, but then the rest of the conspirators draw their blades and stab at him from different angles, plunging knives into his chest, his side, his legs, and his back. The orderly rituals of Roman politics dissolve into confusion and blood. Some accounts say he is struck 23 times. Among the attackers is Brutus. Later writers report that Caesar, seeing Brutus among the assassins, reacts not with curses, but with a stunned expression of disbelief. Whether or not the famous words were spoken, the idea captures the shock of betrayal. A leader killed not only by enemies, but by someone he had once trusted and favored. Standing over his fallen body, the conspirators must briefly feel that they have succeeded. They march into the streets, shouting that they have killed a tyrant, expecting cheers and support. Instead, they find confusion and anger. To the masses, Caesar was the general who gave them land and food. For many ordinary Romans, his death looks less like the fall of a tyrant and more like the destruction of a beloved leader by jealous nobles. At his funeral, the emotional storm confirms how badly the conspirators have misjudged the mood. Mark Antony delivers a speech that plays on the crowd's grief and anger, pointing to the wounds covering his corpse. The sight of the bloodied body stirs the crowd to rage. The funeral pyre becomes the center of a riot. In the months that follow, Rome slides into another round of civil wars. The assassination removed one dominant figure, but it did not resolve the tensions of the state. Into the vacuum step new contenders, including Caesar's heir, Octavius. Over time, the chaos leads not to a revived republic, but to the creation of the Roman Empire. Ironically, the murder meant to save liberty helped clear the path for a monarchy in all but name. Yet Julius Caesar's story does not end with his death. His life and murder become symbols and warnings, retold by historians and dramatists for centuries. The scene of his assassination remains one of history's most haunting images of betrayal. The phrase Ides of March has become a shorthand for sudden downfall, a reminder that no ruler, however powerful, is safe from the fears of those around him. In the end, it is a story about the enduring human struggle over power, loyalty, and the limits of authority.